And I'll just give you one example of something very fascinating about the Qur'an. The Jews have a lot of stories in their book. It's a very, in fact, the Bible is read as literature now. There are many people that will read the Bible as literature, not even believing that it's a revelation, but it's a fascinating book with great stories. The Qur'an, when some of the Sahaba came and complained about not having stories like the Jews have stories, the 12th surah in the Qur'an, Yusuf, is revealed. Yusuf is like a biblical story. It's a completely intact narrative in the Qur'an. It's the only chapter in the entire Qur'an that is similar. And it's as if, to me, it's as if God was saying, I can do that. Like, I can do a book like that. I've already done that. But this is different. Like, this book is different. So the extraordinary aspect of the Qur'an to me is that there is a verse in the Qur'an where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا أقسم بمواقع النجوم وإنه لقسم لو تعلمون عظيم إنه لقرآن كريم. That I swear by the mawaqi' an-nujum. This is in Surah Al-Waqi'ah. I swear by the positions of the stars. And this is a vast oath, if you but knew. And this is a generous Qur'an. When I lived in the Sahara Desert, I used to go every night, would look up in the sky, and it had the most clear skies in the world because there's no light pollution. And you could, the number of stars that you could see was just astronomical. And it was so extraordinary to look up at the night sky. But if you don't know anything about the stars, it just looks like a jumble of lights up in the heavens, and it doesn't look like there's any order. They just look like. But there was a man there that I lived with who used to teach me the stars. So he'd show me at night. He'd say, this is, Thuraya, and this is Al-Jabbar, and this is Al-Jathi. And he would show me, and then he would say, this one emerges on this date on the horizon, and this one on this date, and this one indicates this season. He had a complete knowledge of the night sky. And over time, I got to understand the night sky in a completely different way, because most people grow up in environments where there's no stars anymore. They might see a few stars, but they don't see stars anymore. The Qur'an is like that. If you look at it the way Thomas Carlyle looked at it, it's just a jumble of lights. Astaghfirullah for even saying that. But that's what it appears to be to people. It appears as if it's just a jumble of these amazing, lights that are flashing without any cohesion. But if you have the time, the patience, and the wherewithal to study the book, you will begin to see these incredibly deep patterns in the book. So it's very much the opposite of in the Western tradition, where books have an outward cohesion, but as you begin to study them deeper, they often fall apart. This is what deconstruction is all about. And the Qur'an is the opposite. Outwardly, it looks like it doesn't have a cohesion, but as the deeper you study it, the more clear the order comes. And so what I wanted to do in this short series of lectures is look through the lens of one of the great Andalusian exegetes, Ibn Juzay al-Kalbi. And I'm going to talk also a little bit about Imam al-Ghazali's theory of al-Jawahir, because Imam al-Ghazali also has a very interesting theory of the Qur'an to help people understand the nature of the Qur'an, the deep structure of the Qur'an. But I'll give you an example. Somebody recently told me that they found the repetition of the Qur'an a little trying on them, because they were reading the Qur'an. They found the repetition a little trying. And one of the things about the repetition in the Qur'an is that there is no repetition in the Qur'an. I mean, this idea that And I'll get into that. I'm going to deal with that on one of these sessions. The Qur'an, when it does use the same stories, very often you will see either it's embedded in a very different sequence for a purpose, and then you will see just changes in the words that are very subtle because of the sequence that it's in. And this is why traditionally our scholars understood that the miracle of the Qur'an is not a scientific miracle. There's some interesting scientific facts in the Qur'an, that's fine, but it is not the miracle of the Qur'an. The miracle of the Qur'an is rhetorical. It is a miracle of language. And we're in a civilization that privileges science over, and by that I mean the material sciences, over other aspects. But the single most interesting thing about our species is not science, it's language. We are creatures of language, and this is what makes us unique. And the Qur'an is ultimately a linguistic miracle. It's a miracle of language, and language is what separates us from the rest of creation. All creation has certain types of languages and codes and everything, but we are uniquely this species that is endowed with the gift of the logos, of reason, and language by its very nature is reasonable. It is logical. And that's why it has a grammar, it has a deep structure. And that grammar can only be understood by studying it. And the same is true for the Qur'an.